Are you a writer over 40? Then this video's for you. Hi, I'm Colleen M. Story, and this is Writing and Wellness. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you're 40 or over, your brain just isn't working the same way that it did when you were younger. Fortunately, you don't have to take these changes lying down. I'm going to explain what happens as you age and give you 7 brain management techniques that you can use to keep your brain sharp even through old age. Just like your body does, your brain goes through changes as you age. In fact, it actually shrinks a little bit, particularly in the area of the frontal lobe, which is responsible for things like decision-making, future planning, judgment, and attention span. There are other changes that occur too, in your neurotransmitters, blood vessels, and white and gray matter. These physical changes tend to slow down your cognitive ability or your thinking ability. In one study, scientists tested this. They gave people who were in their 20s and people who were in their 70s the same exercise dealing with numbers. Those who were in their 20s performed the task 75% faster than those in their 70s. In addition to the pace of thinking, there are 5 other changes that happen as we get older. The first one is that it gets harder to focus on a task. This really comes up when we're trying to multitask or do more than one thing at the same time. Now, in truth, multitasking isn't real. What happens when we think we're multitasking is that we're switching back and forth between 2 activities really quickly, we hope. When you're younger, your brain has the flexibility to do that somewhat. But then as we get older, that ability to switch back and forth slows down. So if you're trying to write a chapter and you have your phone nearby and you allow yourself to get distracted and check for an email or a text message and then try to go back to your writing, it's going to be harder when you get older to get back into that scene you were working on. Next, age makes it harder to juggle multiple pieces of information at the same time. Of course, this is a big deal for writers, especially if you're trying to write a novel or even a series, and keep track of multiple characters with all of them with different descriptions and multiple settings and different plot lines. All these things are going to get harder to keep track of the older you get. The third change as you get older is that your brain takes longer to recall something. This is why once you're 40 or 50, you may find yourself more often going, oh, what was that word? That's another sign of age-related change to the brain. Next, as we get older, we have a little bit of a harder time learning new things. That's not good news for writers because the publishing industry is always changing and we need to keep up by learning what's happening now. Finally, the last change is that aging can make it harder to conceptualize a problem and then make a decision about it. So maybe if your last book launch didn't go very well, you need to review everything that happened. The quality of the book, the cover, the marketing plan, the launch, and then determine what maybe didn't go as well and what you need to change next time around. That whole process takes a lot of brain power and can be a little harder as you get older. So the fact that all these changes happen as we get older doesn't mean we have to just roll over and accept them. You can do things in your daily life that'll help keep your brain active and young. So how do we do that? That's what I've got for you next. The first tip is just to remember that your brain, like the rest of you, is an organ. It's a physical organ and it requires the same sort of healthy lifestyle that the rest of your body does. In fact, studies have shown that anything you do to promote heart health or cardiovascular health is going to promote your brain health at the same time. So we're talking things like eating a healthy diet, exercising regularly, reducing stress, getting enough sleep every night. All those healthy lifestyle choices that you've been taught can help preserve your physical health as you get older will also help preserve your mental health. Now, all of these lifestyle habits are important, but if I were to pick one and tell you make sure you don't neglect this one, it would be exercise. Studies have found that people who regularly exercise every day, 30 minutes to an hour every day, have better thinking and reasoning skills as they get older than people who live a more sedentary life. In fact, some studies have shown that the people who exercise actually have more white matter in their brains than people who don't. So healthy lifestyle habits are a must, but then I've got 7 tricks to help you outsmart the aging brain. The first is simply not to multitask, especially when you're writing. Turn everything else off. Don't require yourself to do anything but write. Put your phone in a different room entirely, turn everything off, and make sure you're focusing exclusively on your writing. That is the best way to get it done in a short amount of time. The second tip is to use charts and lists and programs and apps and anything else that'll help you keep track of everything in your stories. Now, this is probably a good idea anyway for most anyone, no matter what your age is, but I think it becomes pretty critical from the age of 40 on that you use things like Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, Scrivener, Plotter, all of those tools to help you keep track of all your characters, what their physical descriptions are, what their backstories are. All these tools can help you keep all of that straight so that the character who has brown eyes in chapter 2 doesn't end up with green eyes in chapter 11. The third trick is when you're learning something new, take notes by hand. When you write by hand, a few things happen. First, studies have found that the actual physical act of taking notes by hand cements the information into your brain more securely than it does to simply copy paste or take a screenshot or those sorts of things. Second, I would advise you to take notes in your own words. In other words, don't simply copy down word for word what the teacher or mentor says or what it says in the blog, but read it and then reinterpret it in your own words. That is the best way to learn something and to make sure it stays in your brain where you can use it. The next tip is to use dummy words. When you are in the middle of your writing and you get to that place and you're trying to think of that word and it just won't come, put down a dummy word. Put down word or blah or whatever you want to use as a space holder and come back to it later and fill it in. Studies have found when you try harder to remember that word, it's going to recede even farther in your brain. Put down a dummy word, let it go, and then fill it in later when it comes to you. The next tip is to keep notebooks everywhere because you want to catch any ideas that you may have for new stories or for the current story that you're writing. You need to write those down. Don't trust yourself as you get older to remember them because you probably won't. So write them down, jot them down on your cell phone, maybe send yourself an email with the idea written on there. Just make sure you capture it somehow and get it to yourself in physical form so that you're not relying on your brain to remember it. The next tip is particularly for those writers who have trouble focusing when they're writing. Turn on music that's going to help you focus and help you concentrate. Just make sure it's a type of music that can play in the background as you write. So instrumental music may be the best, something that is not going to, draw you away from your story, but one music that will help you sink into it. And the last tip I have for outsmarting your aging brain is to always be learning something new. Now everybody thinks, oh sure, yeah, I think that's a good idea. But then ask yourself if you're really doing that. Most of us tend to think it's a good idea, but then when we're faced with the opportunity to actually learn something new, we shy away from it. This is because when you're really learning something new, you're out of your comfort zone. It doesn't feel comfortable, but forcing your brain to learn something new creates new connections between the neurotransmitters. And that fosters new growth in the brain and also promotes health and longevity. So when you're thinking of learning something new, think of something like learning how to play a new instrument or learning how to do a new craft, taking a class in photography. Something that totally challenges you is what's going to liven up your brain and make it act younger. If you want to increase your writing productivity and be able to get more done and stay sharp into your older age, first, make sure that you're adopting healthy everyday habits. Things like eating well, exercising, reducing stress, getting enough sleep, all those things. Then here's a quick review of the 7 ways you can outsmart the aging brain. If you'd like to see more helpful videos like this, please do subscribe to my channel. If you like that video, please hit the like button. And if you want more help on increasing productivity and getting more of your writing done in your busy life, please see my award-winning book, Overwhelmed Writer Rescue.